Welcome to this mini lecture on identity. In this mini lecture, we will briefly examine what identity is, as well as what its relevance is for curriculum planning and writing. Now, what are your identities? Identity, of course, is a much debated concept, and you've probably heard about it in the news in recent years. Some people believe that identity is a bad thing because it divides people. They like to use the phrase identity politics and usually say things like, well, there's no African American, there's no Asian American or Mexican American, we're all just Americans. Notice though that the people who assume the stance still cannot avoid using an identity type label, American. Other people take great pride in their identities because their identities tie them to people with whom they share something in common. It is no coincidence that people who feel marginalized often take great pride in their identities, since for them shared identity allows solidarity with people who also feel excluded from the dominant norm, and hereby becomes a way to survive and work together towards social change. The African American thinker Kimberly Crenshaw once described some identities as intersectional, meaning that, for instance, an African American woman often encounters compounded challenges and disadvantages throughout her life due to the fact that she is both read as black and a woman within society. Some identities, on the other hand, have historically been dominant and allow a greater experience of social power. Consider, for instance, that religious, legal, and other civil institutions have traditionally privileged people who identify as heterosexual. Another example is the history of white supremacy, that has granted white people such influence that our racial identities have often been invisible to us. Now think of other identities related to race, ethnicity, culture, language, religion, gender, sexual orientation, social class, age, and ability, to name a few examples. Which ones have been normative, in other words, regarded as the social norm? And which ones have been marginalized throughout history? How about today? Which identities are regarded as normative and which identities are still being marginalized? It's important to ponder over these questions for a moment. The social thinker Judith Butler writes that identity is performative. Here she means that we are often unconsciously handed scripts of social expectations at a very young age that then become our identities and that we then follow throughout life. For instance, at birth, the doctor exclaims, "It's a boy!" And suddenly I'm expected to play with blue cars and not pink dolls. Of course, identities are also fluid, as Butler points out, and people can negotiate and change their identities. The important consideration, though, is that identity violence is inflicted when people who really aren't causing any harm are denied the opportunity to live out their identities in public as they experience these. This is why the identities of each of our students are so incredibly important to consider when planning and writing curriculum. Do our students see themselves, their family and community histories, as well as their linguistic and cultural backgrounds in the curriculum that we write, in the literature and the textbooks we provide, as well as the instruction and assessment activities that we provide? Thank you for your time. After having completed this module's readings, I want to ask you to please refer to the assignment description of the identity graphic organizer that you will be creating. and attempt to further break open this really important concept of identity. Have fun.